So I just want to say thank you all for taking the time to be with us today in this important subject. It really is lovely to have you here. So let's look at why we need to start the conversation. It's just so important. Over 40% of the children around the world experience abuse annually, and this relates to over 1 billion children. Now, we've got to I think my voice is coming out there, Lisa. Okay, so this relates to over 1 billion children every year, and it is happening in your community. We've got to realize that, you know, when we talk about abuse, people always go, oh, well, it happens in poor communities, or it happens somewhere else, not in my community. You know, I know these people and it doesn't happen, but it does. It happens in every single one of our communities. And the following facts are from ISPCAN, which is the International Society for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect. So evidence is mounting that child maltreatment is the precursor to many of the major social problems today. 95% of child abusers were themselves abused as children. Now, I do need to say that not all people that are abused go on to be abusive people. That's not the fact. But we are saying that it is a cycle. And people that are abused learn abusive behaviors and many, many times pass them on in different ways. So 80% of substance abusers were abused as children. 80% of runaways cite abuse as the factor. 95% of prostitutes were sexually abused. 78% of our prison population were abused as children. Can you imagine if we can get the figures down on child abuse, what a difference it would make to all these people that are ending up in prison? Not because they're bad people, because they have been abused, they have got problems, and we could make a massive difference. 50% of suicide attempts reported having been sexually abused, and 100% of child abuse is preventable through education, through making sure we know what we're doing with children, educating parents, educating teachers, and educating communities. So now that you know some of the statistics about child maltreatment, let's look at the effect that it's having on the children in our communities. So many long-term effects can be caused by maltreatment: low self-esteem, emotional problems, depression and anxiety, eating disorders. Self-harm is a big thing at the moment. I mean, so many kids that I speak to and friends' kids are self-harming because they're just not coping. And we are not giving them the tools to learn how to cope with all of these things. PTSD, where children re-experience the traumatic events of abuse. Suicidal thoughts, difficulty forming and maintaining relationships, infected with life-changing sexually transmitted diseases, and impaired neural connectivity, which can result in learning difficulties and regulation of emotions. So if a child is abused at a young age, under the age of 8, there is a lot of neural connectivity that doesn't form, and these children end up being at such a disadvantage as they grow up and are trying to get through school. It affects them tremendously with their learning and their behavior. So I can say as a fact that as an abused child, as a sexually abused child, I grew up with low self-esteem, with emotional problems, with depression, with an eating disorder, with difficulty forming relationships. So I can say firsthand, I know this is what happens. And some of you out there that are listening to this will also know that these sort of things have happened to you. This is a fact, that children that are abused end up with lots and lots of different problems. Luckily, I'm a strong person and I've managed to get out of it and to share, but and to, I don't know, sort of by sharing my abuse with people has been a lot of my therapy and has healed me. But some kids don't have that ability to get out of it, and those are the ones that maybe have the suicidal thoughts, maybe have the self-harming problems. So I'm very passionate about this, as you know, and I really feel that education is the way we've got to do this. We have got to educate teachers, parents, and communities about abuse, and that we have to start talking about it, which is what this is today. Why aren't we talking about it? So what prevents people from having the conversation with children or with anybody? Embarrassment. People feel uncomfortable with the subject of abuse and body safety, and they have no idea where to start. They also find it an embarrassing topic to discuss. And sometimes people think that these sort of conversations are inappropriate with young children. So, as you know, we have the My Body is My Body program, which is easy to teach children. It's non-threatening, it's a comfortable program. So there is no excuse for us not to be teaching children at a very young age, from the age of 3, to start learning about their bodies and their empowerment of their bodies, that this is mine and nobody has the right to hurt me or touch my private parts or do things that make me uncomfortable. And if we can teach children to have that ability as they grow up, we can stop a lot of sexual abuse. Lack of knowledge is another reason people don't talk about this subject. They don't know if they've got the right words to create a meaningful discussion. And again, the My Body is My Body program will help you with that. Some parents think it's not their place to educate in this subject. They believe that it should be taught by schools. And sometimes, due to their cultural, religious, or personal considerations, they may believe it's wrong to have such discussions. I know I'm plugging the My Body program. I don't mean to, but what I want to say is that we've taught in the most conservative groups and the conservative cultures with this program, and nobody has ever had a problem with it because it is not offensive. So there are ways to teach children in a way that all cultural, religious groups will feel comfortable with. Okay. The other reasons are personal discomfort, having been abused themselves. If people haven't shared their abuse, they might find it painful to discuss this subject. It might trigger bad memories and feelings. But what we need to say is that the sooner you start talking about this and sharing your problems with others, like-minded people, with other like-minded people, you will start healing too. So many of us, I mean, I didn't reveal my abuse till I was 30, and it's way too late. There's so many problems that have occurred before then. Some parents think there's not enough time, they're busy childminding, cleaning, coping with day-to-day life to even consider this conversation. But we need to explain to them that they need to make time for this conversation. It's very important that we start the conversation and make it open to children so that they feel comfortable to ask all the questions they need to ask. You know, every time I've done this program with any children, there are a million questions afterwards. Kids they want to know things, and it's up to us to open the lines of communication so that they feel comfortable and they know it's an acceptable topic to talk about. Again, people might have, they might be struggling with personal issues. They might be in a domestic violence situation, financial struggles, dealing with illness or divorce. But again, as I say, I could just implore parents to make time, just a few minutes each week, just to have a little conversation with your kid. Is everything okay? Are you having any problems at school? Is anybody bullying you? Has anybody ever tried to touch your private parts? You know, is there anything you want to share with me? It's simple, easy, and it doesn't take a lot of time, but your kid needs to know that you are there and that you will be able to share with them. So what prevents parents from recognizing the signs of abuse? Okay, this is another area we need to teach teachers and parents and communities about, is the signs of abuse. So parents may not be sufficiently well informed on the physical, emotional, and psychological signs of abuse. They might be too busy with everyday work and life to acknowledge the changes or behavioral patterns. When a child suffers from anxiety, OCD, ADHD, eating disorders, self-harm, bedwetting, some parents are not looking for the root cause of the problem. And I think that's another big problem. We just go, oh, our kid's got ADHD, or our kid is a bedwetter, or they're self-harming. But we need to look at, why are they doing this? Is there something behind this that is causing the anxiety or the self-harm? So look for the problems. Parents might have a fear of overreacting, or that there may be some false accusations causing trouble in the family. Some parents might not want to know what's going on, so they might think that something was going on, but they have a fear of having their suspicions confirmed. Now, I've just been watching the Jimmy Savile documentary, and for those in America, he was a very famous TV presenter here that did all sorts of things for charity, and he got knighted, and he was very well thought of. But there was also people that knew that he was doing things, or suspected that he was doing things, and never said anything. And it turned out that he was abusing hundreds and hundreds of children. And that is the problem. People don't want to have their fears confirmed. And we need to get over that. We need to realize that if something's going on, it needs to stop. Because if there is a perpetrator out there, many, many pedophiles will they will abuse hundreds of children. It's not like they just go out and pick one or two children. A pedophile can abuse hundreds of children. So again, if you've got suspicions or fears, talk to the child, make sure you know what's going on. And if there is anything, make sure you get help. Talk to the right authorities, and make sure that child knows that you are supporting them. It's really, really important, if a child comes to you with any abuse, that you say, thank you for sharing that with me. I know that was difficult, and you're really, really brave to come to me with that. We really have to show support instead of going, oh, I don't want to hear it. Let's not talk about that again. Or I don't believe you. You can do such terrible harm to a child by doing that. So we need to support and then get to the root of what is going on and what a kind of abuse is happening. So each and every one of the points that we've talked about is to show you that it is so important to start this conversation. We have to start acknowledging this in our communities, talking about it, educating our teachers, and making sure that people feel comfortable with discussing this and knowing that we can do something about it and we can help. I'm just going to finish off because I think it's nearly time for Dee. I have a PDF that I will make available to everybody that goes into what the what child abuse is all about. It goes into why children don't disclose abuse. So there's a lot of important issues in the document. And as I say, I'll make that available. It's called Let's Start the Conversation. But now I would like to introduce you to our next speaker, who is Dee Russell Thomas. Let me just get my notes up. I'm sorry if I sort of babbled through all that very quickly, but we've got a lot to cover. So Dee, her life has been dedicated to supporting young people, particularly the most disadvantaged. Her career as an educationalist has enabled her to work in many countries and amongst many different nationalities, cultures, faiths, and different languages. She trained in education, social anthropology, and counseling, and has produced numerous research papers, including a PhD proposal on breaking the silence. Since the 1970s, Dee has worked with asylum seekers and refugees, is a strong advocate of women's causes, but is particularly passionate about ensuring our children receive the best upbringing possible. As a mother and grandmother, her philosophy has always been, if it's not good enough for my family, then it's not good enough for anyone else's. She is an educational consultant, an international inspector, and deputy lieutenant of Gloucester, as well as GGA UK Chair of Child Welfare and an ambassador for MBIMB. So with further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dee Russell Thomas. Thank you, Dee.
Wow, I think that may have taken up my 15 minutes.
Sorry.
Thank you so much, Chrissy, and to my fellow panelists, Lisa and Titia. And I'd like to say it's a pleasure to be here, but I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say it's a privilege to be here because I wish we didn't have to be here. I wish that we didn't have to have these conversations, but I am glad that we are here together because maybe together as a team, we can make a difference. With regard to your points, Chrissy, I was interested to pick up on a few of them, if I may, before I start on what I was going to talk about. With regard to it cutting across all genders, all ages, all cultures, all faiths, and all socioeconomic classes, I think it's important for us to emphasize that sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse is not unique to working class, to white, to black, to females, to males. It cuts right across the board. It is not discriminative. And also, when we talk about many abusers who have been abused themselves, it's really important, particularly for those who are survivors, or I like to say thrivers. It does not mean that all those folk who have been abused are likely to go on and abuse. It means that the people who are abusers may well have been abused themselves. That does not mean the same thing. And yet, society often turns that round. And if there's one thing that's going to stop people from disclosing and make them feel inadequate as a parent, it's going to be that they think everybody else thinks they're going to be abusers if they tell them what they have experienced. I can't emphasize that enough. I think it's really important for us to know that that is not the case. There are many, many healthy people thriving in our society and bringing up their families in a wonderful way.
Absolutely.
So that's really important to, I feel, to pass that on.
I do, because Dee, I was abused. I have never abused any of my 5 children, you know, so it's not something that carries, but it can, you know, so carry on.
I think it's also important when we're talking about those people who disclose and the bravery that takes. That's really important. You have to be brave in this present society to disclose. Let's hope that one doesn't have to be brave in the future. But I think it's really also important that we have to teach and develop people who have been abused into knowing that it's not always healthy to disclose randomly. And that's the different edge of the coin. I think you have to, as you do when you're choosing friendships, as you do when you're choosing lovers, as you do when you're choosing your shopping in a supermarket, be discriminate. Be very careful about who you are disclosing to, because unfortunately, not everybody will react, will respond, will treat you in the way in which they should. So one of the important things in the future, when we do get to the point of people disclosing, we must make sure that they know who and when to do that with and who they feel safe with. It's building up a trusting relationship. And the bottom line is, because somebody has been abused in some way, that does not define them as a person. They are not an abused person. They're a person who happens to have been abused. And I think for me, that's really important too. So that was just in response, Chrissy, to what you were saying. So I hope you don't mind me going off on one a little bit. For me, I was going to be just talking briefly about the 3 steps. The first step, preventative. And that's the hardest, because if you want to prevent abuse, and if we're talking specifically about sexual abuse, but although there are all the others as well, but let's look at that. Who do you know who's going to put their hand up and say, excuse me, I'm a paedophile, can you help me? It doesn't happen. Why doesn't it happen? It doesn't happen for many reasons. One is, again, because of the stigma, the taboo, and the fear. Quite understandably, somebody who stands up and says they are a paedophile is not going to be given a gong or a medal. They are possibly going to be vilified. They are going to be hated. They're going to be discriminated against. And one might say quite right too. But actually, if we set up our society to react in that way, how are we ever going to address the core of the problem, i.e. the perpetrator? Not all perpetrators want to be cured, healed, hallelujah. Thank you very much. They're quite happy with what they're doing. They cannot be reached. But you know what? There are some who hate what they're doing. They are ashamed of what they do. They wish to God they could actually talk to somebody about it, but our society doesn't allow them to. And we need to work on that, because we need to work on all sorts of aspects of support. It could be medication, of help, of whatever it might be. Are we there yet? Not even close. Because we're not, I then move on to step 2. And step 2 is preparation and protection. We have to accept this is happening in our societies. Therefore, if we know this is happening and we can't address and heal all the perpetrators, then we have to protect our children. And in order to do that, we have to talk. We have to talk about things we don't like talking about. It's dirty talk. It's adult talk. It's embarrassing talk. We don't do that sort of thing with our children. Hey, we're their parents. We bring them up nicely. We need to break that down. We need to actually say, we've got to have conversations with our children in order to prepare them for what might happen in society in the future. How many of us as parents say, hey, we're not going to tell you that if you put your hand in a fire, it's going to burn. We're going to let you do it over and over and over again, and then you'll be a bit embarrassed and you won't tell us about it. We don't do that. So why don't we have the same attitude with abuse? We need to talk about it with our children. We need to have the conversations, and we need to explain to them, which is why the MBIMB program is great, because it does it in a musical, gentle, comfortable way. We need to show them how they can protect themselves. And the key areas are, you need to recognize that your body is your body and it's nobody else's body. You need to recognize that you have a right to look after your body and not to do something. But importantly, you need to also, our children need to know that they can talk about things, all things that have happened. I can remember many years ago when I was on a holiday and I found lots and lots of shells, and I gathered all these shells together and I put them in a bag that I found in this lady's toilets. And then I took them back to my mother, and she went all embarrassed and uncomfortable. And my older sister started giggling. And instinctively, I knew I'd done something wrong, but I didn't know what it was. It took me probably until I was in my 60s to work out what it was. I had put all these shells into a sanitary towel bag that happened to be in the toilet. I just thought it was a bag, for goodness sake. I'm saying that silly story because I'm trying to explain how embarrassment can stop parents from just having natural, healthy conversations. Is Adigan on a conversation somewhere else? I think he might be. Anyway.
Yeah. Dee. Hang on, Dee.
You're muted, Dee. We can't hear you.
I didn't touch anything.
Sorry, Dee, it's me. I was trying to mute Adigan and I muted everyone, so, and including you. Apologies.
Sorry, I thought you were fed up of me. I'm going to talk. Yeah, so I think you start with step 1, which is hard, preventative, trying to actually address the perpetrator scenario. Step 2, preparing for the conversations and protecting our children in advance of anything happening. And then sadly, step 3 is the disclosure and the healing. And that is at that point that we need to, the terminology I've always used is break the silence. We need to create opportunities for our children and often our adults too, is that we need to be able to be open and talk about it just as if it was something else that had happened to us, like a headache, like breaking our leg, to make it not a secret, because this thrives on secrecy. It thrives on shame. It thrives on guilt. It thrives on blame. And the bottom line is we need to make sure that our victims have all those issues stripped from them, that they know that it's not their fault, that they know that this was done to them by somebody else who has the problem, not them. They need to find a safe and healthy environment for them to be able to talk, for them to be able to share what has happened to them. And we could create these environments. It's not so difficult. There are many opportunities. The starting point is the home, unless, of course, the home is where it's happening. If the home is where it's happening, let's look at the schools. All children go to school. We can create opportunities. Look at our subject areas that we could be working in. Art, crafts, English lessons, drama lessons, PSHE, form time. There are so many different humanities, so many different opportunities. The more we talk, the more open it becomes, and the more people realize they, as individuals, are unique. They, as abusers, are not, as abused, are not. This happens, as Chrissy has said, to many, many people. If I get COVID, which I hope I don't because I'm going to my son's wedding soon, I'm not going to feel stigmatized because I know it's happened to a lot of people. If I am abused, likewise, I need to know that there are a lot of people out there who have also suffered, and it's not their fault. So I think we need to create those opportunities in schools, in the home environment where possible, in youth clubs, in toddler groups, in art evening classes, all over the place, theatre groups. I think it would be really nice, and I'm just thinking this aloud, Chrissy, as I've been talking, wouldn't it be nice to get the MBIMB programme linked up with the travelling theatre groups?
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah.
And then they can move around to all sorts of environments and share it. Can I just also say that we're looking at preventing, treating, educating, and empowering. We need to provide the opportunities for perpetrators to seek help. We need to educate and prepare parents to warn them and empower children. We need to train teaching staff and youth workers and all who are in contact with our children. We need to equip our children with the appropriate awareness without them being afraid of life itself. We need to train our children to defend their rights. We need to ensure concept of secrets is explored and that telling is important. This secret thing is really difficult, and we need to prepare our children by saying, if X starts to happen to you or is happening to you, do you know what? They're going to tell you not to tell. They're going to tell you it's your fault. They're going to tell you you're an unworthy person. They're going to tell you you started it. You made them do it. if we have those conversations before, they'll recognize it and they'll know that it's not a truth. And maybe if I can just say thank you to everybody who's taken the effort to come along today and listen to us. And also to say, can we work together? Can we share ideas? Can we listen? Can we believe? Can we support? And I would also say, finally, don't forget to look after yourselves. The world is actually full of good people too. There is much happiness to be enjoyed in this life. Maintain your own perspective always and your own well-being, because working in this area can really be all-consuming, and that's not healthy. And if you want to help others, then keep yourself healthy too. Thanks so much. It's been a real privilege, as I say, to be here, and I'm so appreciative. Thank you, Chrissy, and look forward to hearing you, Titia.
Wonderful, Dee. Thank you so much. That was really, really helpful. And I think you hit the nail on the head, is we have to work together. All of us have to work together. We all have little bits that we can pass on and share to make things better. And you know, I mean, I think the traveling theatre groups would be an amazing way to share the My Body songs and message and get into the schools and be something positive. I think the whole idea that I've been trying to work on is to find a positive way to initiate child abuse prevention, instead of having this really, really sad, you know, sort of dour approach to, oh, you know, it's terrible and this. We've got to empower our kids, and we've got to empower our parents, and working together, we can do this, because you, as I say, you've all got amazing ideas and amazing ways to do things, and I think that that's the way we're going to get on top of this subject. Right, our next speaker is the lovely Titia Niehorster from Netherlands, who is a health and wellness coach, and she is also the owner of Bully Aware and GGA for Netherlands. When we finished, we've got Titia to speak, and then we've got Lisa to speak, and then we're going to have a section where you can ask questions. So Titia will be, I'm not going to tell you what she's going to be sharing, but she's going to be working and instructing us on bullying and how to deal with it in a positive environment. So I'm going to hand you straight over to Titia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. A wonderful talk that you held, very important, and thank you, Dee. A lot of what you told also applies to bullying, because basically when you are being bullied, when children are being bullied, this is also causing a lot of emotional damage, as child abuse is as well. So what I wanted to talk about today is just to give some tools, what you can do as a parent or as a caregiver or as a teacher. If you see children who are being bullied, all little things can help. So I'm just going to take you to 8 steps that I know can help with this. Now, I started to really research this topic because as a child, I was bullied myself with my name. This has actually led to me changing my name when I went to high school. And I didn't change my name back to my original name now when I was 40. So can you imagine what emotional damage that bullying with my name has caused for me to go by another name for 30 years? 30 years. And then I changed my name back. And I'm also a mom of 6, and one of my children was also severely bullied at school. And as a parent, I felt so powerless. I didn't know what to do. You go to the school, you talk to the teacher, and nothing helped. It continued. I thought, what do I do? Do I take my child out of school? Do I put her in another school? You have so many dilemmas to face when you deal with this as a parent, when your child is being bullied. And so I really started researching this topic, talking to so many people about this, because especially also since many people are online now, cyberbullying is also a big issue these days too. You know, everything is digital. So we really need to empower our children to have the self-confidence to deal with this, to recognize negative behavior when they see it, and to really teach them it's not about them. Like the biggest life lesson I've learned so far, we all keep learning, is that the behavior of someone else, it is with them. It has nothing to do with you. And this is something very important that we all need to teach our children. So when you are being bullied, even if it's online, even if it's in the schoolyard, the person who is bullying you has probably is going through some issues, is dealing with problems, but it is with them. It has nothing to do with you, because many children who are being bullied, they tend to withdraw from social situations, you know, because they have fear to be bullied again. And so they tend to get lonely. And so I think it's our duty, I would even say, as grown-ups, as parents, as caregivers, as teachers, to really teach, to really recognize also the signs of bullying. When you see a child who is withdrawing, who is becoming shy, who is really changing their behaviors, and I know Dee and Chrissy talked about this too already, it also goes for bullying. When you recognize these changes in behavior, then talk to those children. The most important thing that we can do is be there for them. Be someone who is supportive and create an environment where it is safe for those children to talk to you and be approachable. Because if you have someone to talk to, it makes it all that much easier. And then, you know, if you take it seriously, you can really make some steps together with the child to start tackling this problem. Now, the first thing we can do to boost our children's self-confidence is to really teach our values. How you talk with your child, in what role ever you have, it will shape the view they have of themselves. I often like to think the way you talk to your children, your voice is what they hear in their head. So it's really good to approach your children positively and also to teach them right from wrong early on, as small as they are. Because then if they are faced with bad behavior, with bullying or with abuse that we're talking about today, when they see it, they will recognize it and then they will know it's bad behavior. And we need to teach our children that the standard is to treat all people with respect. And that goes for everyone, no matter race, religion, color, culture, country. We are all as valuable as any other human being, and we are all equal. And this is something I think is a very important message. It's close to my heart, and that's what, as GGA, we really need to carry out in our societies, wherever we are in the world. Now, what also helps to boost your child's self-confidence is to also focus on the positive, because even like when you turn on the news, right? What do you see? You see negative messages. And it's a tendency for people to focus on the things that went wrong in their lives, right? And therefore, it's really important to emphasize the things that we do that go well in your life, things that they did great, things that they have to be grateful for. So focusing on the positive is also really important. And I always tell my children, and this is also really important, that I love them no matter what, but every child will, in some moments, show some behavior that is not appropriate. And that's normal. That's children growing up. You know, we all did some bad things when we were little. So, but when you address that with your child, the key there is to focus on the behavior and not on the person, you know. So you might say to your child in a certain situation when they're misbehaving, and again, that's normal, I love you, but I don't like your behavior that you're showing right now. It's the behavior that you don't like, but you will always love your child. And so the difference between that is quite important, because if you tell your child, you are so annoying, you are not kind, that's about them, that's about their personality, and that is attacking their self-confidence. So we need to really separate that from the person and the behavior. That's really important. Also, and this might be surprising, so I may suspect some questions about that, don't overpraise your child. Now, what do I mean by that? Praising your child obviously is important, but when you do it too much, it also has some side effects. When your child, for instance, completes a sports tournament, you will be very proud and you will keep repeating this. What a good job that you do. You're the best. And obviously every parent, many parents, they're the biggest fan of their children and they love cheering them on. I remember when my children were little, I was cheering them on the soccer field. Go ahead, Yuri, go and score that goal. You know, I was his biggest fan. He was embarrassed, but I was cheering him on. But it's really important for parents to take a step back and teach our children to be competent in the world, because there are better ways, studies show, to build self-esteem with your children than only by praising them for everything they do. So it's really important to let your child take risks, to let them make choices themselves, to help them solve problems themselves, and also help them to stick with what they start. And it's not easy for parents, because more often than not, we want to protect our children from problems and from risks and from pain and from failure. But what is life? In life, we fall. In life, we get hurt. You know, in life, we fail, and that's okay. So to build confidence for your child, you have to let them take chances and make choices and teach them to take responsibility for them. And we see so many parents that are actually trying to rescue their children from failure all the time. You know, I remember, for instance, my 3-year-old daughter, when she was 3, pouring this glass of lemonade and spilling it all over the table. Instead of rescuing, I let it clean up herself. She took a towel, she cleaned it up herself. So she solved her own problem that way. This is just a simple example, of course, but she solved her own problem. And that's a great way for a child to build confidence, knowing that when a problem occurs in life, they are able to solve it. And that can start very early on. And the most important thing is that self-esteem, it also comes from feeling loved and feeling secured. And that comes from developing that competence. Becoming good at something, it takes time. And as much as we want to, we cannot praise our children into competence. We really need to teach them to do that themselves, to solve those problems, and to really become good at a choice that they've made. Because confidence, it comes from doing, you know, it comes from trying and failing and then trying again until they succeed. But that's what builds confidence. So I think that's very important, what we can do. What else can we do? You can praise your child, of course. You can let them, for instance, let them help around the house, let them do little chores, because children also need the opportunity to demonstrate their competence. And then when they do a chore in the right way, they feel their contribution is valuable. And also encourage them to fully pursue their interests, you know, make sure they follow through to completion. I'm sure many of you will recognize that when your child makes a decision, he chooses a hobby, to a musical instrument or some kind of sports. And then in the beginning, they're very enthusiastic, right? And then there come these moments when they're not so enthusiastic anymore. And they don't want to go to a lesson. They don't want to go to practice. They don't want to practice music. And I think it's very important as parents that we make sure that our children, they stick with what they choose and follow through and take responsibility for that choice. Because when they do, they keep practicing that piano or that guitar, they start practicing, they become good at it. Then all of a sudden, and my son is such a good example of that with guitar lessons, all of a sudden, you won't have to encourage them to play that guitar anymore because he will be...
Sorry, Titia.
No problem.
I don't know who that was.
No problem. He then will be so enthusiastic that he is good at it, that he is competent. He will get that guitar on his own, and then he will drive crazy playing that guitar, right?
Oh.
I'll just hang on a second.
Sorry. It's a bunch of kids.
We have children listening today. This is really... We have children watching. That's
yeah, sorry, Titia. Hello, kids.
No problem, no problem.
We need to mute. Sorry, okay.
Thank you. No worries, no worries. That happens, right? And I'm so happy that children are watching, and I hope they're learning something today too. Now, what do you do as a parent when your child is struggling or failing? I would say, don't lose sleep over this, because many parents actually have it backwards. They think struggles and failures will hurt their children and it will hurt their self-esteem. But actually, it's a golden opportunity to help build it. Because by failing again and trying again and then succeeding, they learn that not giving up and keep trying will lead them to success. And that is such an important lesson that we can teach our children. And then I have one little creative solution to finalize my talk that we can do. And I did this myself, actually, with my daughter. She's now 11. Make a brag file, and I actually made a little brag jar. So it's a good practice with your child to make a brag file, and that is full of praises that they have earned. So anytime they receive a compliment, they are to write it down, fold it up, put it in a jar. And then when your child is having a bad day, they can take some of these brag files out of the jar and read through them. And then they remember, oh, I did very well on this. I'm very good at that. And I got a compliment about this. And then, because we all have down days, right? Children do too. And just by this little simple trick, they can really remember they are worthy, they are competent. And that really helps with their self-esteem. So, and also a little trick you can do as a parent, and that's kind of funny. You know, children are always eavesdropping, right, when you're talking. So they're just like little spies up the stairs when you're downstairs talking. I know my kids did. So you can make sure your kids overhear a little boosting. So I tell my friends, for example, that how the teacher said that my daughter is so kind, or how my son was working so hard when he was little, tying his shoe. And then when they hear it, you know, they hear you talk about them with pride. And then they just start to shine, you know. And since they were spying, it will make them feel good, you know, hearing you talking positively and proudly about them, even though you're not seeing them. So that's just a little trick you also can do. So these are some tips in how to boost your children's self-confidence. And I hope this was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if there are any questions, then at the end of the show, I'm more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chrissy and Lisa, for the organization. And it's a privilege to talk here today.
Oh, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Titia. And I have asked Titia if she'll do an article for the Ambassador magazine on what she's been talking about today, because it's lovely hearing you say all these things, but we might go away and forget half of them. So it'll be lovely to have it in writing so we can go back and refer to it. And I think your jar is a wonderful idea, not only for children. I think we should all do it, because we have terrible days where we feel that we're useless and nobody loves us and things like that. It would be lovely to go into that jar and pick something up and go, oh, actually, I'm not that bad. So good idea for everything. Right, let's go with our last speaker of the day. And I tell you, I am so proud of everybody today. We've got such an amazing group and such talented, such talented people that have got such a wealth of information. So thank you for sharing all your information. So our last speaker today is Lisa Jones, CEO and co-founder of Global Goodwill Ambassadors Foundation. She's also the Dean of GGAF Learning Institute, publisher of the Ambassador magazine, and she just runs GGA. So and she's also a very good friend, like most of you are of mine. So I would just like to hand this over to Lisa, who will be talking about consequential emotional abuse today. Thank you. You're on mute. Unmute. There you go.
Thank you, Dee, Titia, and Chrissy for your presentations. I'd just like to start with, I just turned 57 years old. So it took me a long time until I felt that if someone wanted to stigmatize me for being a victim of child abuse, that is their problem. It is not mine. So I have chosen to speak about what I went through as a child, because I'm hoping that will help someone else. And this has come about through Chrissy's, dealing with Chrissy for years and finding my voice. And I do agree with Dee that, when you're first talking about it, please find someone that you trust, because it could come back. People aren't always nice. We wish they were, but until you reach that point of not caring and realizing that it's their problem, I would take Dee's advice on that. So, growing up, I grew up with my grandparents from 3 weeks old. My parents lived next door, I'd say 50 to 75 yards away. So very, very close. And there was a lot of domestic violence that was taking place between my mom and my father that I witnessed. And it was horrible domestic abuse. I myself am a survivor of child abuse. It was it was an uncle, but not an uncle by blood. So, and it's at that time, I'm in one of those areas, I'm in that time period of, we're looking around 1973 to 5, that you live in a small town of maybe 5,000. Everybody knows everybody. And it wasn't one of those things that was ever talked about. Even the domestic abuse was shoved under the rug a lot. You just hope it went away. I never spoke about it until I was 18. And, you know, the person who did this fully admitted it. And but it was something I had to come out and say, because I couldn't go to my grandmother's for Easter dinner anymore when that person might be there with my aunt, because I didn't want to be near him. I just didn't want to be near him. So I finally had to tell my grandparents, and who were, of course, very upset. But I told them, look, I told him I was like 23, you know, I'm a well-functioning kid. I grew up playing sports. I put all of my energy into sports. I had to have a ball in my hand, a bat, a field hockey stick, you know, or even play in the mud. I had to be outside playing. So that was where I went. I'm just going to go through a couple of the PowerPoints that I made and talk about, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I really think that we have to, because I had said this in the video, and mine was audio. I think that we need to start with really focus on prevention. Prevention is the most important thing. There are statistics out there, of course, that we can look at, but those are only the statistics of what has been reported. Think of all of the things that don't get reported, or the children who are trafficked. There's just there's a ton of stats that are going to be low. But if we start with parenting and we help educate parents with the knowledge of their actions in front of their children and how it can affect them. So that's where it comes in with consequential emotional abuse. And sometimes that is referred to as common emotional abuse too, CEA. It's abuse experienced as a consequence of participating either as a victim or as a witness. So, to the next screen. Domestic violence, it creates emotional damage and scarring that lasts a long time after the episode is passed, and sometimes for a lifetime. Children witnessing domestic violence, they don't understand what's happening. I didn't understand what was happening. And it's, most kids are scared. And emotional abuse is the least recorded type of abuse, but it's present in all other abuse types. Now, why do children watch? You can see this little girl sitting here watching her mom and dad. They simply don't understand what's happening between mommy and daddy. They want to help and they don't know how. I found myself in that situation many times where I would, I'd walk out of, so I had a bedroom at my grandparents, a bedroom at my parents, and my dad would come in very late on a weekend, and, I walked out before, and he had a gun to my mom's head at one point. I don't know what I felt. I didn't feel scared. I think I felt numb and not knowing what was going on. So, but in the resources back then in a small town to get help for my mother, she would go back because he would always tell her that it's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen again. And we've had a lot of talk since then. And you know, I always knew that I could be with my grandparents. So I would just run outside and run to my grandparents. But I don't think I was ever afraid of my father. I think I was just numb during those incidents. So we have to really, parents need to be educated on the arguments they have in front of their children, how it can affect them. You know, and I've got some myths and facts, but I think that a lot of these have been reviewed. But here is so here's an abuse is rarely restricted to one type, and you can see in the Venn diagram how they overlap. A physically abused child is often neglected. A sexually abused child may be emotionally abused. Emotional abuse is always present when other forms are identified. So we need to be aware of that. So I think that, you know, Chrissy's program, teaching this to people that are getting married, or the community centers that, you know, thinking about getting married or thinking about having children, going through these classes will maybe help them also. And as it was already mentioned, child abuse takes place across all cultures, societies, and nationalities. These behaviors cross all racial, economic, cultural lines. Sometimes families who seem to have it all from the outside are holding a different story behind closed doors. So we have to get the information out to people. And talking about stigma, it is true that abused children are more likely to repeat the cycle as adults, unconsciously repeating what they experienced as a child. Maybe some form of it. Maybe they were physically abused, and then the emotional part, and then they don't know how to deal with making relationships happen very well. Could be a whole, you've got a whole group there to intertwine. Not all children that have been abused. I had a ticket in 1990. That was it. I did have a pretty bad speeding ticket. So, but you know, I find myself watching how people treat their children in stores, and if they're jerking their child up by their small child up by their arm, like completely off the floor, I have a hard time not saying anything, because you're gonna jerk that child's arm out of its socket. And people just need to be, there's all kinds of education. It comes down to garnering the knowledge and putting the education out there. So many adult survivors of child abuse have a strong motivation to protect their children against what they went through and become excellent parents. And those of us who don't have children, we want to help protect children also. And that is me. So I think we should all vow to never stigmatize a child who's been abused. That's one of the worst things we could do. And I think Chrissy already went over that. And what do you do when you witness child abuse, or when a child tells you about it? And Chrissy's gone over that, but you know, like, just some of those is remain calm, stay supportive. You might be the first person whom they've discussed these feelings with, so you need to be compassionate and empathetic. Listen, reassure them that help is available. Don't judge, do not interrogate. Make sure that you're You let them know that you're going to be writing everything down. Learned that from Chrissy. Reassure the child that he or she did nothing wrong. And remove the child if you have to for self-harm if this is a concern, but always follow up the steps for reporting the child abuse or neglect to the proper authorities. That is the most important thing. You know, it's a hard thing to do when a child comes to you and tells you this. And Chrissy went over this too. It's, you know, reporting concerns. Oh, you know, I know this is happening to a child, but I really don't want to interfere in someone else's family. What if I break up someone's home? Will they know it was me who called? What I have to say won't make a difference. Don't talk yourself into that. Don't talk yourself into any of these things. Children are little. They don't understand. They're just children. And we have to protect them. No, it's trying to admit somebody here. So the last thing I was just say, you know, true child protection starts with each of us. It comes from awareness, garnering knowledge, and understanding what comprises child abuse. It comes from the willingness to act when we see or suspect abuse. When you see something, say something. Children are our future, so let's protect them and provide them with the knowledge to understand where to go for help and to say no. And My Body is My Body program definitely teaches children that. And I will always back the MBIMB program. So I'm going to cut mine short. But, you know, I just have one more thing. You know, the abuse of children survives and thrives on silence. Let's break that silence. Thank you, Chrissy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you for sharing your story, because I know how hard it is. You know, it's so important, because people need to know that it's not just, as Dee said, you know, it's not just people in poor areas or, you know, in certain societies that are being abused. It's all of us in all areas. I mean, I came from a good family. Lisa came from a good family. It's everybody, and there's just so much of it. And I think that we have got an amazing group of people here, and a powerful people that can do things. And I just think so much time has gone past and nothing has changed. I started this program 30 odd years ago. And when I picked it up again 7 years ago, when I retired, I went into it and I thought, oh, something will have changed by this time. And I realized that nothing had changed. You know, nothing has progressed. And that's because society has not progressed with this subject. We have to start talking about it. We have to start admitting that 50% of our children are being abused every year all around the world. That is not acceptable. If 50% of children were getting hurt with or had some awful disease, everybody would lift mountains to deal with it. But 50% of our children are being abused and having their lives destroyed, and it's not enough has been done. I'm not saying people aren't doing something, because there are a lot of people that are doing something, but I think we almost need a worldwide movement to change things, because it's okay if it's kind of like somebody's doing a little bit here and a little bit there, but we need to do a joint worldwide movement where we teach children from the age of 3 about their bodies, body protection, body empowerment, teach parents, even before they have children, to know what to do, to know where to go if they're struggling. I mean, a lot of the mothers here will know how difficult it is when you have a baby, when you have a child screaming. My child had colic, and she screamed every night for hours and hours and hours and hours. But I never wanted to hurt her. But if I wasn't in a good mental place, I can understand how somebody would hurt their child. But that help needs to be there, and that help for people, that they don't feel embarrassed to call and get help and say, I feel like I might hurt my child. And that help needs to be there to say, okay, how can we help you? Not to ostracize them or stigmatize them for being somebody that may be abusive. So society needs to change. So thank you all. I think we'll do some questions now. If you either want to put your hands up, I see Raphael wants to, you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you, all the presenters. Wonderful job. I am inspired and empowered today. Thank you very much, everyone. Lisa, good to see you. It's been a long time.
It has been. It's good to see you, sir.
Yes, I've been focusing more on mental health as my final destination for specialty, and part of it, of course, doing some great research on mental disorder genetic for children. But watching the presentation and having learned so much today, something that I'm not comfortable with, I have to be honest, is the LGBT sex education for children. I know that some conservatives are already against that. And personally, I see more mental health issue in the long run, developing a program like that for children. I'm looking at the long-term psychological effects, but it's not scientifically proven yet. So my question it's an open question, you can take turn if you can give me some input, is, do you think it's mentally healthy? And if yes, what are the pros and cons in introducing that to children education curriculum?
I am going to, I don't know, Dee, do you feel comfortable handling this? You work in schools, and you've probably got more idea of what is being put into schools on this subject.
I think this is going to be a difficult conversation for many people, because we are now talking across the world, not within our own country. So if I'm talking about the UK, and it happens to be my personal opinion as well, I think it is healthy to discuss LGBT and Q. I think it's important, because my belief, and the belief generally in the United Kingdom, is that LGBT and Q is not curable, because it is not an illness. It is not a disease. It is what a person is. And therefore, if that person is born as is, male, female, homosexual, whatever, then to deny that and to hide it it then develops into the big word that we've been using throughout this conversation: secrecy, shame, blame, misfit. And that creates, in my humble opinion, greater mental health issues than if one wasn't addressing it at all. But I am fully aware that there are different countries represented here, there are different cultures, and we are at different stages and different levels of acceptance, belief, understanding, opinion, whatever you might call it. So I'm giving you my personal opinion, but I accept that it may not be the opinion of others. Does that make sense?
I agree with you, Dee.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I don't
Thank
have
you.
children, but what the issue is in the US that we see on the news every single day, they want to start children very, very young. You know, preschool, first grade, and having them choose whether they want to be called a he or a she when they may not understand that yet. I do believe that changing all these curriculums right now at this point in time, when children have been closed in due to COVID, could cause a huge mental break. It could really let them get back into school, let them get back into the groove of school, and then talk about it. You know, LGBTQ should definitely be spoken about, but I think there's a certain age, and I don't know what that age is. I just know in first grade, I would have been, you know, yeah, is it time to go play yet? Lunchtime yet? But parents need to be involved in that too. They have a right to say how they want to raise their children. And I'm just going to say this now. Walt Disney World took away the use of he, she, and princess and all of that. So they're not going to use those pronouns anymore. But whoever said that the LGBTQ community didn't want to be called a she at some point or a princess at some point? And I think it's unfair to take it away from them if that's what they would like. So that's where I end on this.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, is that Titia?
Yes.
Yes.
If I may respond, I totally agree, Lisa. I do have some concerns about the age where it starts.
Yeah.
On the other hand, as I said in my presentation, and as you said in your presentation, everyone is equal. And you do still see today in the world people who are gay walking down the street who are being abused for that, living in secrecy, depending on the country and the culture. And I very much disagree with abuse because of homosexuality or whatever someone feels to be. I think everyone has the right to feel how they feel and to be who they want to be. And this is not for us to decide. This is not for us to judge. This is every person for themselves. So I just wanted to say that. And like living in the Netherlands, it's quite an open conversation. We were in fact the first country in the world where the gay marriage was legalized. And I had to say, I was quite proud of that because I thought, well, in this country, people who are gay, they can be married. And why not? You know, that's fair. Why not? So, yeah, I just wanted to respond to that regarding where I live. But I do understand, as Dee said, it depends on where you live, what level, what culture. So I do respect everyone's opinion. But in my opinion, we are not to judge how someone feels. That's up to them. and how they want to live their life. That's everyone's right.
Yeah,
I
believe
don't
that's
think we should take, I don't think we should take away from the LGBTQ community on if they, and Miss Jenner, forgot her name now, has talked about this also, Caitlin. But then you also get into these, what's happening in the US. You have, there was an LGBTQ transgender swimming again in the girls, against the girls swim team. And that does become an issue, because in most cases, males are stronger than women. So that's a tough subject that someone's going to have to decide how to handle. And
Lisa, I think what we'll do, because we've only got about 5 minutes left, I think we should have another discussion on that in another month, because I think it's important. And I think it's important that kids know that they can ask questions about all of this.
They should be able to ask
questions. At the right age. I'm just going to give, we've got some hands up. I'm just going to give Pooja, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, Chrissy, thank you for this discussion. And yeah, see, I have a best friend, and she's 5 years, 10-month old, and she's my best friend, one of my colleagues' daughter. And whenever I have a conversation with her, I always feel that, being an advocate, being a lawyer, it's always my, my thought process goes like this. We have to start everything, correction has to start from the root. And what I think is, as we were discussing about, sex education and LGBTQ, all that, before that, our learning or teaching has to be start with human, and humanity comes first. Mostly if we start with that notion in schools, colleges, we will see, mostly reduced number of any abuse, child abuse, or, bullying in schools, colleges, or, even when it comes to other things, all that crimes we are witnessing against children and women, or against humankind. So that education has to start from there. Even in, I teach for a part-time, and always I love discussing with kids, same thing, that how they are all safe, right? Rather, we have, anyways, in my country, I'm from India, we have different cultures, different religions, and thousands of languages that we speak. We have lot of differences, but we have, unity in that diversity. And always I discuss about unity, how they can enjoy and celebrate each one's culture, and how they can embrace, next kid with all that, whatever that kid brings with. So that is what is important. I think to teach this, we need not to worry about the age, and we can start this from home, we can start this from school. And that is what is my take. And I always feel that kids don't come with any baggages, or what and all we have as elders. So it is easy for them to teach that human and humanity comes first. So then probably when they grow up, when they reach the certain age we are talking about, definitely they will understand on their own. They have to, respect the human, next human, whatever he is, as he is, he or she is, need to be accepted. And that is what I think we need to start with. And I'm so happy. I have watched almost many videos from My Body is My Body program, and I really want that to reach many and all children in India. So whatever the help that you think I can do, whatever the work for it from my end, I'm ready to do. And I'm so glad that I'm meeting people like this, and there are people who are thinking bigger picture, and I'm getting connected with them, and I'm there. You can count me in anytime.
Oh, Pooja, thank you very much. And thank you very much for your comments. That's greatly appreciated. Brian, can we just be quick with this, because we're at the end of time, but we'd like to hear what you've got to say.
Okay, thank you so much, Chrissy. Yeah, my main issue is about translation or interpretation to indigenous and local languages, because some of us, we deal normally or majorly with rural communities, so it will help us better if we can translate, okay, like getting copies, okay, translated copies, or we can translate them by ourselves, and we can be able to teach those programs and other enlightenment and sensitization to the children. So that's my main issue.
Okay, well, as you know, we've got My Body is My Body translated into nearly 30 different languages already. But if you've got any volunteers that would like to do some translations, we would love to hear from you, Brian, because we want to get the program into as many languages as possible. Rana, thank you, Brian. Rana, you have a... Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone who took place in this conversation. I'm going to be quick. I had 2 questions, but I'm going to make it just one to give a chance to anyone else who wants to ask these questions. So the one that I'm going to choose is that when I spot a certain situation in public of domestic abuse, like parents hitting their children or screaming at them or shouting at them, and sometimes I'd want to take the initiative myself or stop what's going on in any way, and then I see other people wanting to do this as well, and some actually do take a step to prevent the child from being beaten by their parents, and then it makes the situation actually worse for the child. They start blaming the child for the intervention of other people, and it gets worse. And when they go home, and I know that this happens, the kid could get beaten even more or harder or punished because other people intervened in the middle of this. So what is the right behavior to do when you spot public domestic abuse or any other kind of abuse?
Dee, did you have something you were nodding? I can take it if you want, but
no, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I was going to say that before. Wonderful question. Totally agree with you. There is a huge danger of exactly what you've said. I'm not going to reiterate it in great depth, but if you see somebody and you then tackle them, what have you done? The first thing you have done is you have humiliated that adult in front of other people, and worse so, in front of their child. What are they going to do in retaliation? They're going to take that child back and they're going to beat the hell out of them because they have been humiliated. You have done that child no favors, and I fully understand. I've been really close to doing the same. I think what you have to do is, if you have concerns, you have then got to report it to the authorities. I think there was a question that came up on the chat line of a similar ilk, with somebody asking something about their own daughter was playing with somebody and that friend had said that there was abuse or whatever. What should they do? You just have to do what you have to do and you report it. So in that case, you would go to the school perhaps, or you would go to the authorities. It's always better to have made a mistake on the side of innocence than it is when something, we all know the Victoria Climby and all the other cases that have been throughout the world. better to make that sort of mistake, I think. And can I just also say that when we're talking about the perpetrators, let's not forget that perpetrators were once children. So if we're looking at prevention, maybe we should be looking at intervention with young children and having discussions with children, not very, very young, 3-year-olds, I'm not suggesting, but looking out for signs. And as Titia says, starts with bullying, and having that conversation with children to stop those children becoming not just the victims, but becoming the perpetrators.
Let me ask you this, though, just one question. At what point, and we've all seen these videos where there have been hidden videos or someone was standing by with a video and the child was being beaten, and we've all said, why didn't that person stop it? So at what point do you judge whether you need to intervene right then and there, or report it to the authorities and then they never follow up? I mean,
I think if the child is in danger, I mean, I've been sent some horrific videos through the years.
Yeah.
And I think if the child is in danger, you would have to intervene somehow. Because I mean, I've seen people beating babies, literally beating babies. And I mean, I would never barge in and just sort of, you may have to think carefully how you go in and just say, hey, what's going on? Is there a problem here? And just kind of shock the person into stopping, you know, and then say, can I hold the baby for you? You know, are you having a problem? But that's if the child, as Dee said, if it's in a situation where somebody's just hitting a child or something like that, and I don't mean just hitting, I mean if the child is not in physical life-threatening danger. But I think you've got to use your common sense with things like this. If you know, if you're going to endanger your life to do this, that's not a good thing, then get onto 999 or whatever the police number is in your country, and say there's an incident happening now. But if that baby is not going to last 5 minutes because it's been beaten that badly, you may have to step in, you know, and at your own risk, and just see what's going on. It's really difficult.
I think if you're going to step in, you can't, I may disagree here. I think if you're going to step in, then you have to also contact the authorities. You can't step
definitely.
in, take the child, do something, walk away, because then that child is, as I'm sorry, I didn't know who asked the question before, but as they said, they're going to get a bigger, there's going to be a bigger threat.
Always contact the authorities, and hopefully
to their life if you don't do that. So if you're going to intervene, you've still got to do what I've suggested. You've still got to contact the authorities, because you put their life at greater danger if you don't.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Dee. You know, contact the authorities always. But as I say, it just some of the videos that I've been sent, I know people are videoing so that they can, I don't know, sometimes I think they video them so they can share them on Facebook and things like that, which is just atrocious. But trying to get something stopped, especially if it's very young children, or if anybody's life is in danger. But always phone the police, the authorities, whatever you can to get some help for that child. Rebecca, sorry, we've been keeping you.
I'll try to be quick because I know time is short. I wanted to thank you because this is amazing. I've never been to something where everything is so open like this, and I've had experience with several of these things personally, myself and with my child. And I was going to ask the question, but Dee and Lisa answered it. Thank you about the child. And actually, I did tell the teacher, and I had a wonderful response. And
Good.
Here in the Netherlands, I understand that, well, I don't know if it's just Montessori schools where they're at, but teachers are trained to tackle and respond to these things in the right manner. So it's good to know that it will be addressed, but in the right way, and I don't have to do any more. But I was fascinated that the child thought my child was trustworthy enough to disclose to as well. And I was kind of proud of her, but obviously I can't tell her that because it's, so what I wanted to say is, as a parent, and I don't know how many of us there are here, when someone calls you on something you're doing or asks you a question about your child, like once my neighbor called me very recently because my little 4-year-old has many tantrums. She's tired, she's learning in 2 languages at school. She's just, her cup is full most days. And so she really goes for it with the crying. And we know that we just need to be patient, wait it out and let her express. But not everybody hears that in a different context. My neighbor called me and she was worried. And I said to her, I'm so glad you care enough to call me, because if I had heard someone crying like this and I didn't know, I would have done exactly the same thing. So it's never bad. If you make a mistake, the person you made a mistake with won't mind because they're a good person. And if you haven't made a mistake, you've helped. So just to let you know that from a parent perspective, that's all.
Yes, and Rebecca, also, you have somebody to talk to then as well. It's the communication is so important, especially when you are a parent struggling. My first child was like that. Tantrums. I never knew what to do with her. She just used to lay on the floor and kick and I mean, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't old enough. By the time she was doing that, I think I was about 20, you know, and it was like, I don't know, there was no internet with books and telling you how to look after your child. So, and you do, and I'm sure if my neighbors heard her scream, they were probably thinking I was doing something awful to her, but she was just having tantrums like children do. But it's important we talk, and it's important we get help and share and have people that we can lean on and oh, nice, Dee, thank you. Like your shirt.
There you go, Dee.
Well done. Right. Bugashen, I don't know if I'm saying your name right. I think we might have to make this the last one today. How can we help you?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chrissy. It's my pleasure to be part of this event. I really benefited a lot, even though I joined the meeting a bit late, but I really learned a lot. Huh?
Good.
So I'm Bugashane Masonga. Yeah, I'm from Kakuma refugee camp, Kenya. I think really this program is very important for refugees living in Kakuma refugee camp. And I think it's gonna benefit most of refugees, as you know, refugees, maybe children and even adults are being, I can say, they're, what am I going to say? They're victims of abuse and maltreatment for children due to their status of vulnerability, because sometimes maybe when they need services or other things, you find that they are being abused. They might be abused either physically, emotionally, or socially due to their status of being really to the point of their vulnerabilities. So I had a question. My question was about, because we are working in a program that is just a community-based organization that is just trying to work on the gender inclusion so that women and youth, athletes and children might be also be part of the decision making in Africa. And that organization is by the name Hope for a Bright Africa. So my question was that, no, if is it possible to start implementing this program before you finish up with the trainings, because I saw there are 2 trainings or 2 modules that you have to finish, 2 courses. In My Body is My Body. I don't know if the program might be implemented before you finish those courses, or you have to finish them before you start either doing advocacy in the awareness promotion, either providing trainings on children and also even adults on how to make sure that the children are not abused. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much for your interest in implementing the program. I would suggest that you do both courses. They won't take you long. The first course, about 45 minutes. The second course is song by song. So you can learn one song, then do it with the children. Then learn another song and do it with the children. And each song has got a lesson plan, so it'll tell you exactly what to do to present to the children. So it's not a long process, but it's important that you do the courses and you do the material so that you get it right. So you're saying the right things to the kids, and you're making sure that you cover everything, because it's all important. All the information is really important for children to know. So yeah, and it's there, and share it with all your volunteers, because they can all take it. There's no charge, so as many of you can take it. The more people that know about preventing abuse, the better your community is going to be.
Thank you so much. Because I'd already downloaded the PDF, because at time you send the PDF, and I downloaded all of them. So that's the reason why.
I'm just going to put some. Thank you very much. And if you've got any questions, please contact any of us. We all know about the program here at. Oops, I'm just trying to paste.
I think I have your email.
The course. There you go. That's course 1. I've put in the chat, and I'll just put course 2. Well, I think it's been an amazing afternoon, and I just really think everybody has been so helpful and just given such great information. And thank you all for joining us. We've recorded this, so we will put the recording on YouTube and on LinkedIn and on Facebook, so that if there's anything you want to go through, or if you feel that there's information you'd like to share with other people, please feel free to share it. And I think what we'll do is just have another group get together in about 2 months' time, and just share some more relevant information, because there's a lot of really important information that we need to get out into our communities. So on behalf of anybody, is Lisa, Dee, Titia, any of you've got any last comments you want to share? Otherwise, have a lovely weekend, everybody, and thank you.
I just appreciate everyone coming and being able to see everyone. Raphael, it's so good.
Likewise, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Everybody.
Thank you.